ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारिणं परमानन्दं माधवम्। So we'll resume our discussions in Canto 3, verse 30, chapter 33, verse 16. This, as I mentioned, is the last chapter in the third canto. And the chapter began with prayers of Devahuti to the Lord, acknowledging his kindness. And she goes through this hierarchical level of acknowledging his mercy. So first she says, I'm so glad that you're offering liberation from this samsara. And then she said, that's not surprising, because that's your nature. But what is surprising is that you could have accomplished this by your energies, but you're personally coming. That is surprising. And then she said, that's not surprising, because you're attached to your devotees. But what I'm surprised is that you're coming as my child, in my womb. And then she said, that's not surprising, because you appear as a child when the universes are destroyed on a banyan leaf. But what is most surprising, now she changes her focus from Lord Kapila to what Lord Kapila has given. Most surprising is that you're giving this process that is easy and potent, giving the highest result. That's most surprising. And then she said, that's not really surprising. What's really surprising is that amongst all the options that you gave in the process, the chanting of the holy name is the easiest. But you're so kind that one does not even have to chant your name completely. Simply by your name appearing on the tip of the tongue of a person who is completely immersed in sinful activities. He gives the example of a Chandal. Such a person becomes qualified to perform yagyas. He's freed of his prarabdha. That is most surprising. And then she says, actually, I'm completely bewildered by your mercy. I cannot even estimate the level of your mercy. So all I can say now is to offer you my obeisances. So in this way, Devahuti, very sweetly, but also very scientifically, she walks us through the levels of mercy that the Lord is giving, ultimately to glorify the mercy that comes through his holy name. So after that, Maitreya Muni, he starts, so Lord Kapila leaves. After that, now the focus turns to Devahuti, and we were basically discussing her spiritual practices, that how she was performing austerities within the path of devotional service, meditating on the Lord, taking a bath 3 times a day. Her body became thin, her hair became gray. So while describing her austerities, Maitreya, he also wanted to describe the opulence in which she is living. because it is easy to give up something that you don't have. Right? I can say that I don't really care for a Boeing jet. It's of no use to me, but it's of no value because I don't have it. So what's the point in what's the greatness in giving up something that you don't have? Real greatness is that you have it, it's available for you, and then you give it up. So to make that point, Maitreya, he starts describing the opulence of the surroundings of Devahuti. So third canto, chapter 33, verse 16. Payafena nivashaya dantarukma prachidadaha ashnani chahaimani shushprashastratrani cha. The opulence of the household of Kardama Muni is described herein. The bed sheets and mattresses were all as white as the foam of milk. The chairs and benches were made of ivory and were covered by clothes of lace with golden filigree. And the couches were made of gold and had very soft pillows. So Shaya Danta. Danta is the teeth of an elephant. So Shaya Danta is that her bed was made of elephant teeth, resembling. So Nibha is replacing Payafena, the foam of the milk. And then Rukma Parichada, that it had gold coverings. Then Asnani, Asan, the chairs were Haimani. They were also made of golds, and Susparsha. Sparsh means to touch. Susparsh means very, very soft to touch. And they were covered with Astranani. They were covered with cushions. Swachaspatika kudyeshu mahamarkateshu cha ratna pradeepa abhanti lalana ratna samyutaha. The walls of the house were made of first-class marble, decorated with valuable jewels. There was no need for light, for the household was illuminated by the rays of these jewels. The female members of the household were all amply decorated with jewelry. So, Ratna Pradeepa, that the lamps that they had were jewel lamps. Generally, the nature of the jewels is that they reflect sunlight or they concentrate sunlight, but they will glow only if there is some light. But these are divine, so they are generating light. So Abhanti, they are generating light, and that is reflecting on the Swachspatika Kudyeshu, on the clear crystal walls. And the walls were Maha Markatshu. They were decorated with large emeralds. Now, what about the residents? So, Lalana, the woman over there, were Samyuta Ratna. They were also decorated with jewels. Srila Prabhupada in the commentary purport of this verse writes that this is Vedic culture, that every household item has intrinsic value, so that even if it outlives its usefulness as a household item, it still has value. So we still see remnants of that in India. I remember in our house, when utensils became old, then somebody would come and take them because they could melt them and do something out of it. If furniture was old, then again somebody would come and take them and do things out of it. So when I come to this country, this whole notion of throwing things in the garbage was a little shocking to me. But I guess it's happening the same in India now. People are throwing, but earlier on, everything was recycled because some intrinsic value was always retained. Okay, verse 18. Grodhyanam kushmitaye ramyam bhavamaradhumahe kujadvihanga mithunan gayan madhuvratam. The compound of the main household was surrounded by beautiful gardens with sweet, fragrant flowers and many trees which produced fresh fruits and were all tall and beautiful. The attraction of such gardens was that singing birds would sit on the tree, and the chanting voices, as well as the humming sound of the bees, made the whole atmosphere as pleasing as possible. So Maitreya described the house, the residence. Now he stepped out of the house and is describing the surrounding of the house. That the gardens were filled with celestial trees. The environment was harmonious. There were singing birds, intoxicated humming bees. So all an indication of a vibrant and an attractive natural environment. Yatta pravishtam atmanam vibhuttano chara jaguhu vapyam utpal gandhinyam kardam eno palalitam. When Devahuti would enter that lovely garden to take her bath in the pond filled with lotus flowers, the associates of the denizens of heaven, the Gandharvas, would sing about Kardama's glorious household wife. Her husband Kardama gave her all protection at all times. So one way to understand it is that when Devahuti was under the care of Kardama, then she would enter into this fragrant pond and the Gandharvas glorified her. The other is that even when Kardama was not there, he was still giving her protection. So gave her all protection at all times. So the meaning of the word pati is one who so apati is trouble. Pati is one who protects the wife from trouble all the time. And Kardama Muni was a powerful mystic and an ideal husband. Prabhupada said this is the ideal husband-wife relationship. That Kardama Muni gave Devahuti all kinds of comforts in his duty as a husband, but he was not at all attached to his wife, which we understand that as soon as then conditions were right, he gave up everything, including his wife. Verse 20. Hitva tvad ipishitataman Hitva tad ipishitatatmam apyakhandalyošitam Kinche chakaravadhanam putra visleshanaturaha. Although her position was unique from all points of view, saintly Devahuti, in spite of all her possessions, which were envied even by the ladies of the heavenly planets, gave up all such comforts. She was only sorry that her great son was separated from her. So this was the reason that Maitreya was describing all the opulences to show that she gave it up without even a second thought. Tadhitva, that gave up that house. Then ipsita tamam, that ipsita tamam means that was most desirable, api akhandal yoshitam, even by the wives of Indra. Kinchit chakra chakara vadanam. After giving it up, Devahuti became silent. Kinchit chakar vadanam, that she did not speak. But she became silent, overcome with grief, not because she had to give up on that. Maitreya says, Atur putra vishleshana, because she was pained by the absence of a son. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Kinchit Chakra Vadanam, that she became silent, also means that when she was in the presence of all things, she actually became filled with grief, which means that she had actually developed complete material detachment. That all these beds of ivory and jewels, etc., she was basically completely detached from all of it. Srila Prabhupada says, and Vishnu Chakravarti also agrees, that filled with grief also means that when she saw all this and not her son, she was filled with grief. So she was not sorry to see her material comforts, Prabhupada says, but very much aggrieved at the separation of her son. It may be questioned here that if Devahuti was not at all sorry to give up the material comforts of life, then why was she sorry about losing her son? Why was she so attached to her son? The answer is explained in the next verse. So we'll do the next verse, 21. Vanam pravajalite patya apatya viraturaha gyata tadvapya hunaste vatse goriva vatsala. Devahuti's husband had already left home and accepted the renounced order of life. And then her only son Kapila left home. Although she knew all the truths of life and death, and although her heart was cleansed of all dirt, she was very aggrieved at the loss of her son. Just as a cow is affected when her calf dies. So since her husband had also left home, she was aggrieved at the separation of her son, even though she knew the truth. And the analogy is given that like a cow losing the calf. So the focus is more here on the loss of the son. Even though she was aggrieved when her husband won, but she had taken comfort in the presence of Lord Kapila. So this verse describes the depression caused by Vatsalya Ras. So we know that in Madhurya Ras, there is the Vipralamba Bhav, where there is intense pain at separation. So we see the reflections of the same over here, even though her bhav is Vatsalya, but the pain of separation is there. So Prabhupada says here, the example given here is that Devahuti, just like a cow who has lost her calf, was just like a cow who has lost her calf. A cow bereft of her calf cries day and night. Similarly, Devahuti was aggrieved, and she always called and requested her friends and relatives, please bring my son home so that I may live. Otherwise, I shall die. This intense affection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although manifested as affection for one's son, is spiritually beneficial. Attachment for a material son obliges one to remain in material existence. But the same attachment, when transferred to the Supreme Lord, brings one elevation to the spiritual planet in the association of the Lord. And then Prabhupada says, every woman can qualify herself as much as Devahuti, and then can also have the Supreme Godhead as her son. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead can appear as the son of Devahuti, he can also appear as the son of any other woman, provided the woman is qualified. If one gets the Supreme Lord as a son, one can have the benefit of bringing up a nice son in the world, and at the same time get promotion to the spiritual world to become face-to-face associate with the personality of Godhead. So this is Prabhupada in the mood of what he called shooting rhinos. There's actually a book by Shyam Sundar Prabhu, one of his early disciples, Shooting Rhinos with the Swami. So Prabhupada would say that you should always aim high, aim big. You should go to the jungle, tell everybody I'm going to shoot rhinos. So if you come back empty-handed, and they will say, well, at least he went to shoot rhinos. If you go and say I'm shooting rabbits and you come empty-handed, everybody will make fun of you, that you can't even get a rabbit. So here Prabhupada is setting a very lofty goal, that every woman can get the personality of Godhead as a child. So, and presumably it also applies to men. So if one sets that as a goal, then even if one cannot achieve it, the goal, so even if you fall from that, you're still at a very exalted level. That is Prabhupada's idea of setting high expectations with a practical perspective. Verse 22. Tam eva dhyayati devam apatyam kapilam harim babhuva cherato vatsa nyasparata drashe grahe. O Vidur, thus always meditating upon her son, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Kapiladev, she very soon became unattached to her nicely decorated home. So Devahuti may have been momentarily overcome by the grief of separation, or perhaps because of the intense affection of her mother. But because this was directed towards the personality of Godhead, it became a source of her purification. And this is what we see in this verse, that she did not become bewildered. So when material grief becomes very intense, then it bewilders a person. The person is unable to discriminate between right and wrong. Generally, the person sinks into the modes, go into the mode of ignorance, become lethargic, or mode of passion, become angry, upset at everyone. But in Devahuti's case, we see that the grief is actually elevating her. So the first symptom that Maitreya is saying, that she became detached. And the reason is that the object of her grief was the Lord. So when the engagement is from a spiritual perspective, then everything is favorable. Attraction is favorable, and separation is, meeting is favorable, and separation is favorable. The devotee in either case is able to use it to make spiritual advancements. Prabhupada says, here is a practical example of how one can elevate oneself in spiritual advancement by Krishna consciousness. Kapiladev is Krishna, and he appeared as the son of Devahuti. After Kapiladev left home, Devahuti was absorbed in thought of him, and thus she was always Krishna conscious. Her constant situation of Krishna conscious enabled her to be detached from earth and home. And Prabhupada said that unless we are able to transfer our attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no possibility of becoming freed from material attachment. The Srimad Bhagavatam therefore confirms that it is not possible for one to become liberated by cultivation of empiric philosophical speculation. So this is the Gyan path, which results in Vairagya. Simply knowing that one is not matter but spirit, soul, or Brahman, does not purify one's intelligence. Even if the person reaches the highest platform of spiritual realization, he falls dropped down again to material attachment because of not being situated in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. Okay, verse 23. Dhyayati bhagavat rupam yada yadaha dhyana gocharam sutta prasanna vadanam samastavyasta chintaya. Thereafter, having heard with great eagerness and in all detail from her son Kapiladev, the eternally smiling personality of Godhead, Devahuti began to meditate constantly upon the Vishnu form of the Supreme Lord. So notice the flow of the verses. The previous verse talks about detachment, material detachment, and now in this verse, Maitreya is talking about her spiritual attachment. So it's not that she became detached and entered into Shantaras, that okay, nothing is bothering me. But she used that detachment to free herself from material conception and immediately turned her attention to the personality of God. So, Dhyayati Bhagavat Rupam. So, what did she use? All her energies and time into Dhyayati Bhagavat Rupam, meditating on the Rupam, on the form, the personal form of the personality of Godhead, who is Dhyan Gocharam. So, who is Gocharam means where one goes. So, those who meditate, who is an object of meditation. So, Dhyan Gocharam is those who meditate, he is a worthy object of their meditation. Prasanna, with smiling face, again pointing to the very personal form of the Lord. So the reason this is being made is because this point is being made is because the practice of meditation looks a lot like Astanga Yoga. And in a way, she is actually performing Astanga Yoga, but this is Bhakti Astanga because she is meditating on the smiling face of the personality of God. Dhyayati Bhagavad Rupam Prasanna, smiling face. Sutta, whom her son Vadanam had described. So she is using the process that was described by her son. So this was the process of Bhakti Anu Astanga Yoga that Lord Kapila described in chapter 28. And how did she follow the process? Chintaya, thinking of samasta and vyasta. So at that point, we had discussed that initial stages of meditation is samasta. So this is dharana, when meditates on the entire form of the Lord. And then when one becomes more and more focused, then it becomes vyasta. That is dhyan. So in dhyan, one will meditate in great details on each and every anga of the Lord. The toenails on his feet, the shape of his eyes. So that was the process described by Lord Kapila, and that is what she followed. So her meditation is described till verse 26. The next three verses we'll do together, 24, 25, 26. Bhakti prava yogena vairagena baliyasa yuktanusthana jatena jnanena brahmahetuna vishuddhena tadatmana atmana vishvato mukham swanbhutya tirobhuta maya guna visheshanam brahmanyavasthita matir bhagvati atma samshraye nivrita jiva patitvata kshina kleshapta nirvitaha. She did so with serious engagement in devotional service. Because she was strong in renunciation, she accepted only the necessities of the body. She became situated in knowledge due to realization of the absolute truth. Her heart became purified. She became fully absorbed in meditation upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And all misgivings due to the modes of material nature disappeared. Her mind became completely engaged in the Supreme Lord. And she automatically realized the knowledge of the impersonal Brahman. As a Brahman-realized soul, she was freed from the designation of the materialistic concept of life. Thus, all material pangs disappeared and she attained transcendental bliss. So from verse 24 to 32, Maitreya Muni describes her achievement. What did she achieve by her meditation, which is the destruction of the samsara, the cycle of material birth and death. So Bhakti Prava Yogena. So this is by Bhakti Yoga. Prava means that flows like a current. And Vairagena Baliyasa, along with strong renunciation, Yuktanasthana Jatena, produced from the proper practice of Bhakti, Jnanena Brahmahetuna, by knowledge causing realization of the Lord. So you notice that all the angas are included over here. So within Bhakti Prava Yogena, Vairagya is there, and Jnanena Brahmahetuna. The Brahma Jnana is there. Then what else is there? Vishuddhena Atmana, purity of mind. That means transcending the modes of material nature. Result, Tadatmana. She saw the Supreme Lord. Vishvato Mukham, who pervades all direction. Tirubhut Maya Guna Visheshana, who himself is devoid of all material qualities. What was the nature of this realization? Swa Anubhutiya, through personal realization. So the realization was not academic or theoretical. It was personal realization. Avastita Mati. And her mind became fixed. Brahmani Bhagavati Atma Samshraya. So all the three aspects are given here. Brahmani is Brahman, Bhagavati is Bhagwan, and Atma Samshraya is Paramatma, one who gives shelter to the soul. So it said Apta. She attained all three of them. Nivrita, Nivriti, Nivrita. And she attained bliss, accompanied with the destruction of suffering and the destruction of samsara. Apatvita Kshina Klesh Jiva, the destruction of all material conditioning. So this verse is important because it is once again making the point that Lord Kapila Dev had theoretically made earlier on, that the process of bhakti includes everything because Bhagwan includes everything. So here, this verse is talking that through the process of bhakti, she attained the results of Gyan and Astanga. And when she attained Bhagwan, she attained Brahman and Paramatma. Because when she practiced bhakti, she was also practicing Gyan and Astanga. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Maitreya says that this strong detachment was produced from bhakti's proper performance. So he points to the fact, Prabhupada also comments on it, that she was regulated in her practice, which means she was taking as much care of her body as was needed. So this verse in Bhagavad Gita 6:17 about a successful yogi one who's regulated in eating, sleeping, and working and recreation. So same thing is being used over here, that in a deliberate, regulated manner, she practiced bhakti. She meditated with Gyan, Brahmahetuna. So one of the results of a meditation was Brahma Gyan. So this is knowledge that is produced by bhakti. This is not the knowledge which produces the realization of the impersonal Brahman. It's important to understand this distinction. So stepping away, what it means is that as she performed bhakti, bhakti produced in her the knowledge of the impersonal Brahman. It also gave her darshan of the Lord. So tadatmanam, the swarup, the form of the Lord. So specifically it is said Vishvatomukham. So who will have a face? Who has a form? So bhakti also produced in her personal realization of Vishvatomukham and completely devoid of any material modes. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that her mind was fixed in the Brahman, Bhagavan and Paramatma, the shelter of the jivas. The goal of the jnani, the devotee and the yogi are listed in order. She fixed her mind on the full swarup, the Angi, which contains Brahman, Bhagavan and Paramatma. So further commentary on the word Bhakti Pravaha Yogena, that Pravaha means current. So in the stage of Sanna Bhakti, Bhakti Pravaha requires an external impetus. So Bhakti does not flow on its own self. The impetus in Sanna Bhakti is the submission to the instructions of the spiritual master, the rules and regulation. That's the impetus. But in her case, the bhakti was naturally flowing. So this is indicative of the fact that she was at the stage of bhava and prema, where her bhakti was naturally blossoming there. So this clarification is made in order to disambiguate the notion that because she was following the rules and regulations, she was practicing sadhana Vedi bhakti. She was following the rules and regulations out of common sense, that she needed to eat a little bit, she needed to sleep, she needed to take care of her body, and she was doing as much as is needed. Not because she was relying on that to produce bhakti. Bhakti Prava Yogena, her bhakti was flowing on its own. So Prabhupada also explains that why are the symptoms of Gyan and Astangi mentioned in the context of Devabhuti, who was immersed in the pure devotion of the Lord. So Prabhupada says that it may be questioned why she was meditating. The explanation is that when theoretically discusses the Absolute Lord, he becomes situated in the impersonal concept of the Absolute Truth. Similarly, when one seriously discusses the subject matter of the form, qualities, pastimes, and entourage of the Supreme Lord, he becomes situated in meditation on him. So this meditation is different. That it is the meditation that is coming out of Bhagavad Katha. So Prabhupada also makes the point that it is said that you have to be situated at the stage of Brahman to enter Bhakti. Right? Brahmabhuta prasannatma na sochati na kankshati So that is a prerequisite to bhakti. But from this verse, we can understand that this being situated at the stage of Brahman automatically comes within the practice of bhakti. This is why it is said that one who is engaged in devotional service to Krishna is understood to be already realized in the Brahman concept of life, because transcendental knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead includes knowledge of Brahman. So all the practices of bhakti, of Devahuti, were in the category of bhakti. Whether she was following the rules and regulations, whether she was meditating on the Lord, whether she was filled with the realization on the form of the Lord, whether she was transcending the modes of material nature, all of them were in the category of bhakti. Prabhupada concludes saying that the real purpose of all the purposes of transcendental realization, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga, is to arrive at the point of devotional service. Later he says, by executing devotional service, therefore one automatically becomes an expert Jnani and expert Yogi. In other words, Jnana and Yoga are different preliminary stages of devotional service. Okay. So let me pause here and see if there is any comments or discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Just regarding the detachment again, like here also we see Devahuti very quickly detached, and also we see other great personalities like Parikshit Maharaj, Rishabdev, Bharat Maharaj. They just in a very short span of time they detach everything and then go to take a full devotional practice. So it feels like they were already practicing the detachment throughout the life. Otherwise, is it possible to detach in that in a moment notice that one can detach like that? What kind of a practice that my question is what that's what I'm assuming, that there must be some preliminary or preparatory stage throughout the life which enables one to get to that stage. So what would be that preparatory stage, or what kind of preparation one needs to do in order to get to that kind of a detachment?
Thank you. Yeah, you're you're spot on with your observation that these are great personalities, and in a way they were always detached. Like when you give the examples of Parikshit Maharaj, Bharat Maharaj, and Rishabdev, even Devahuti. Devahuti, we made this point, right? So later on, you'll see how it's said that the dirtiness in her mind was cleansed. She never had any dirtiness in her mind, right? But the process is being described for our benefit. If she had dirtiness in her mind, then Lord Kapila would not have arrived as her son there. So these are great personalities. Their pastimes are being described for our benefit. For us, developing detachment is through the process that we're following, through Vaidhi Bhakti. That as we follow the process will naturally result in material detachment. We don't aspire for it separately, but we also try to protect ourselves from excessive material attachment. But we don't really try to develop detachment that much. We don't really follow the neti path. But through the process of chanting, following the regulative principles, engaging in the different angas of bhakti, if you examine your own life, then you will see that things that mattered a lot to you earlier on, maybe they don't matter anymore, or they matter much less to you. So for us, it's a process. For them, it's an event, because they are already perfected souls, and we are conditioned souls that are trying to get out of our conditioning. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments? Any other questions? Okay. If not, we'll continue.
Sorry. Also, there is another thing about Brahman realization and then bhakti, performing bhakti. So there is one understanding that only when we attain Brahman platform, one can perform real bhakti. So whereas we also know, here we see by performing bhakti, she attained Brahman realization also, like it's included in the bhakti process. So are they contradicting, or are they saying the same thing in a different way? Can you please shed some light on it?
They're saying the same thing in a different way, that as we progress through bhakti, we attain the concomitant realization of Brahman and Paramatma. And before we perfect our bhakti, we would already have perfected our other realizations. So for the sake of brevity, or for the sake of not being too didactic, they don't always say that. So the statement would read that in order to perform pure devotional service, you should be situated on the Brahman platform, right? So they don't say that for the sake of conciseness. But before we come to the stage of pure devotional service, we would have already performed Mishra Bhakti. Mishra Bhakti is sufficient to give us these realizations. So that statement is true, that yes, when you perform Shuddha Bhakti, you would have already had these realizations. But then the statement that we're making, that Bhakti gives these, that is also true. Just the level of the purity of the Bhakti. In Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami makes this point that the first two symptoms of bhakti is Kleshangni and Shubhada. He says that you get at the stage of Brahman realization. And he said these are the first two stages of bhakti there. So the point is made that we are performing bhakti, we have some level of Kleshangni, some level of Subhada. But Kleshangni and Subhada, when they manifest completely, then we are at that stage of Brahman. But then he considers this he describes this as the preliminary symptom of bhakti. But the bhakti that is describing is Anibhalashita Shunyam, Jnanakaram, the pure devotional service is describing.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Okay, so what I want to do is, I think I should be able to complete the chapter today. After that, I wanted to do a summation on the third canto, because it's a long canto and we discussed many things. I doubt if I'll have time to do it today. So we'll do it in the next next Monday. But I don't think the summation takes the whole of 90 minutes. I would say that it will take maybe 30 minutes, 35 minutes. So we can, of course, end early. It'll be kind of like a canto break. Or if you have any questions or any points for discussion in the third canto or second canto or first canto, we can always bring it up and have a group discussion on that. Okay, verse 27. Nityarod samadhivat pravrutakun brahma na samsar tadatmanam swapnadrishtam ivotitaha. Situated in eternal trance and freed from illusion, impelled by the modes of material nature, she forgot her material body, just as one forgets his different bodies in a dream. So the summation that was given in the verse 26, the previous verse, is now elaborated in the subsequent verse, so different aspects of it. This verse is essentially talking about material detachment. So Nitya Arudha Samadhivat. So Nit could be because of being stated in continuous Samadhi. So that's the nature of Samadhi, that it is uninterrupted. So Nityarud Samadhivad Pravrate Guna Brahma, and being freed from wandering towards sense objects. Na samsar tadatmanam. She did not remember her body. Swapne drishtam ivotitha. Just as a person on waking does not remember what happened in a dream. So essentially the verse is saying that she transcended from the material to the spiritual platform. Prabhupada said that a great Vaishnava said that he has no remembrance of his body, that he who has no remembrance of his body is not bound to material existence. So remembrance here is synonymously used as awareness. So the person is not really aware of the physical body. As long as we are conscious of our bodily existence, it is to be understood that we are living conditionally under the three modes of material nature. When one forgets his bodily existence, his conditional material life is over. The forgetfulness is actually possible when we engage our senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Verse 28. Taddeya partaposho Pyakrashas-chadya sambhavad babau maler-avachanna sadhuma eva pavakaha. Her body was being taken care by the spiritual damsels created by her husband Kardam. And since she had no material anxiety at the time, her body did not become thin. She appeared just like a fire surrounded by smoke. So fire means that she appeared effulgent. It's not that because of neglecting her body, she became emaciated or sick. She actually appeared fully effulgent. So her physical needs were being taken care by the maidens that Kardam had created by his mystic power. And since she had no material anxieties, she had no cause of any worry. So Vishwanath Chakravarti comments, and Prabhupada also makes the same comment, that as per Vaidyas, as per Ayurveda, the health of a body is related to the state of the mind. So Prabhupada says that if one is free from anxieties, he generally becomes fat. Devahuti, fat, Prabhupada here uses in the context of healthy. Not that he becomes obese, but person is healthy. Devahuti, being situated in Krishna consciousness, had no mental anxieties, and therefore her body did not become thin. It is customary in the renounced order of life that one should not take any service from a servant or a maid, but Devahuti was being served by the celestial maidservants. This may appear to be against the spiritual concept of life, but just as fire is still beautiful when surrounded by smoke, she looked completely pure, although it seemed that she was living in a luxurious life. So Srila Prabhupada gives another interpretation, a deeper interpretation, into fire surrounded by smoke. At one level, it indicates that she was effulgent, healthy. And Prabhupada says that we can also understand that when a fire is surrounded by smoke, the fire still shines through. So the fact that Devahuti was receiving comfort and service from others was like a smoke. But because she was completely absorbed in the Lord, she was effulgent like fire, not really affected by the so-called smoke. Verse 29. Swangam tapo yogmaya muktakesham gatambaram Devaguptam na bhubade vasudeva pravistadi. Because she was always absorbed in the thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, she was not aware that sometimes her hair was loosened or her garments were disarrayed. So, Vasudeva pravistadi, completely absorbed in Vasudeva na bhubade. Because of that, she was not aware of swangam, of her own body, tapa yoga, maya, and engaged in the austerity and yoga, muktakesha, with unbound hair, gata ambram. So gata ambram actually, Srila Prabhupada translates as garments were disarrayed. Vishwanath Chakravarti says ambram is the sky. Gata ambram means that she was clad in the sky, which means that she was not wearing any clothes. But Devaguptam. But she was protected by the Lord. Vishwanath Chakravarti says Devaguptam actually means that she was cared by the Lord. A little bit more intimate connotation. So Prabhupada says in the verse, the word Devaguptam, protected by the personality of Godhead, is very significant. One who surrenders unto the service of the Supreme Lord, the Lord takes charge of the maintenance of the devotee's body, and there is no need of anxiety for its protection. It is said in the second chapter, second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that a fully surrendered soul has no anxiety about the maintenance of the body. So this is 2:2, verses 5 and 6. The Supreme Lord takes care of the maintenance and of innumerable species of bodies. Therefore, one who engages in his service will not go unprotected. So, Rakhe Krishna, Mare Ke. Krishna is protecting. Who can harm you, including the modes of material nature or the elements of nature. And we see this in the case of other Avadutas also. So we see this in the case of Jat Bharat, that he was completely neglectful of his body, but it was very healthy. That is why Maharaj Ravguna, he said, "You come and carry my palanquin," or his soldiers said that you are healthy, you carry the king's palanquin. We see in the case of the Avadut Brahman who comes in the 11th canto, that he was completely neglectful, but yet he was very, very healthy. Why? Because if you surrender to the Lord, then for the Lord to take care of your body is really a very, very trivial thing. Verse 30. Evam sa kapiloktena margana chritta param atmanam brahmanirvanam bhagwantam avapaha. My dear Vidura, by following the principles instructed by Kapila, Devahuti soon became liberated from material bondage and achieved the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Super Soul without difficulty. So Kapila Uktena, she followed the process that was spoken to her by Lord Kapila. She did not manufacture anything else. She did not go and get any other instructions. Kapila Uktena, Sa Devahuti Achirata Avapaha, very, very quickly attained Paramatmanam Bhagavantam. So Paramatmanam, the Supreme Lord, Bhagavantam, the personality of Godhead, Brahma Nirvanam, and also attained liberation. So one might say that this is a little bit redundant. Why say Atmanam, Paramatmanam Bhagvantam, that she attained the Lord, and Brahma Nirvana? After all, if you attain the Lord, you will automatically attain liberation. So Rajani's comment that these statements are there in order to attract the minds of those who are interested in other processes. So if somebody is interested in Brahma Nirvana also means to be free from material pangs. Or if somebody is interested in Atmanam is realizing the super soul within the Lord. So the point is made is that through Bhagwantam, Brahma Nirvana and Atmanam was attained. So if a person is pursuing Brahma Nirvana, and then he says, well, actually this process of Bhagavad Bhakti includes Brahma Nirvana, let me follow that. Even though my interest is in Brahma Nirvana, let me follow Bhakti. So when these verses are spoken, they are meant to attract the minds of those who are being misled by the other sub-processes. Devotees by nature are unwilling for attaining either Brahma Nirvana or Atmanam. So the counter question is put that supposing a devotee reads this verse, and then he says, but I'm not really interested in Brahma Nirvana. I'm not really interested in Atmanam, and so in Paramatma realization. So why promise this to somebody who does not even want it? So Vishwanath Chakravarti, he explains with an analogy that there is a person who has very valuable jewel, much more valuable than gold, and he's distributing that. So for a person who knows the value of the gem, he will take that gem quickly. Now there is another person who does not know the value of the gem, but who is going after gold. So he comes to him and he says, what are you giving? And he says, I'm giving this gem away. He says, you don't have any gold? He says, yes, this gem actually has gold in it. The person says, okay, please give it to me. So for a person who is following the path of bhakti, he already understands the supremacy of bhakti. He's not disturbed by the other angas that are there. He will use it for bhakti. And for one who is not pursuing the path of bhakti, he will get attracted by the statements that this sapphire contains gold, it also contains silver. So please take it. Srila Prabhupada in the purport writes that there is also a Vaikuntha planet known as Kapila Vaikuntha, to which Devahuti was promoted to meet Kapila and reside eternally, enjoying the company of her transcendental son. Okay, so she has now given up her material body and gone back to the spiritual world. So let's see what happens to the ashram of Lord Kapila. Verse 31. Tadvirasid punyatmam kshetram trilokya vishrutam namna siddhapadam yatra sasam siddham upeyusi. The place where Devahuti achieved her perfection, my dear Vidur, is understood to be a most sacred spot. It is known all over the three worlds as Siddhapath. So this is the sacred city of Siddhapur or Siddhapath or Siddhakshetra, and presently it is situated in Gujarat. It is situated in Gujarat, and it is actually so I'll confess that I did not know about it, but it is actually considered to be a very prominent pilgrimage place, especially for those who are performing the Shraddha rituals for their mother. So Siddhapur is also known as Matra Gaya. So just like there is Gaya, there is Matra Gaya, which is specially for mothers. And the understanding, of course, is that because this is the place where Lord Kapila Dev, he liberated his mother. And this is the place where Devahuti, the mother of the Lord, attained liberation. It has the potency of giving liberation to mother. So that is why sons go there and perform the Shraddha ceremony of their departed mothers. There's a temple over there, and where they have deities of Lord Kapila and Devahuti and Kardam, the deities of Devahuti and Kardam there. So it's a popular temple over there. Also interesting to note that this conversation between Lord Kapila and Devahuti is recorded in scripture that is known as Siddhapur Mahatmaya. It has 114 verses in it, and it is recited over there as part of the Shraddha ceremony. So this lake, the Bindu Sarovar lake, on which Siddhapur is situated, in the Bhagavad Purana, this is in 321-28, it's stated that the lake became pure because a tear of compassion fell from the eye of Lord Vishnu. According to local tradition over there, they say that Bindu Sarovar became pure because of the tears of happiness that fell from the eyes of Devahuti when she attained perfection. Okay. Verse 32. Tasyastadyoga vidhuta martyam martyam abhut sarit shrotasam prabra somya siddhida siddha sevitaha. Dear Vidur, the material elements of a body have melted into water and are now a flowing river, which is the most sacred of all rivers. Anyone who bathes in that river also attains perfection, and therefore all persons who desire perfection go bathe over there. So Martyam refers to the body of Devahuti. Then Martyam, Vidhuta Martyam, Vidhuta Martyam. So her body that is purified of matter. Martyam means material body. Martyam means without material. So purified of all material notions. Tat Yoga. How? By Bhakti Yoga, Abhut Sarit became a river, which is Shrotasam Pravara, which is glorified as the best of rivers because Siddha, it bestows perfection, and Siddha Sevita, and it is worshipped by the perfected souls. Next verse. Kapilopi Mahayogi Bhagavan Piturashramat Matram Samunujgyapya Pragudichim Disham Yayu. My dear Vidur, the great sage Kapila, the personality of Godhead, left his father's hermitage with the permission of his mother and went towards the northeast. So verses 33, 34, and 35 will now talk about the activities of Lord Kapila. So it may appear that this is happening after Devahuti gave up her body, but we know that Lord Kapila left before Devahuti began her austerities. But it is simply catching up on that aspect of the conversation. So small point of trivia here. This is verse 333-33. So there are only 2 verses in the Bhagavatam with 5 identical numbers. One of them is 1:11:11, first canto, chapter 11, verse 11. And the second is this verse, 333-33. 1:11:11 talks about Krishna entering Dwarka. And this verse talks about Lord Kapila departing. So how did he depart? He took permission from his mother and he went east. So it says that he went northeast, and Vishwanath Chakravarti says that this is sadachar, or this is conventional etiquette, that when the sannyasis leave their home, when they renounce their home, then regardless of which direction they have to travel, they will first travel north, and then they will adjust. So Lord Kapila, we know that he walked all the way across India from west to east, and he took up residence in the area of Bengal in Ganga Sagar. So he would have traveled in an easterly direction, but because of the etiquette of renunciation, he first went north and then traveled east. Siddhacharan Gandharver Munubhir Chap Saraganahe Stuyumanam Samudrena Dattarhana Niketanaha. While he was passing in the northern direction, all the celestial denizens, known as Charanas and Gandharvas, as well as the Munis and the damsels of the heavenly planets, prayed and offered him all respects. The ocean offered him oblation and a place of residence. Prabhupada says that it is understood that Kapila Muni first went towards the Himalayas and traced the course of the river Ganges, and he again came to the delta of the Ganges at the sea now known as the Bay of Bengal. The ocean gave him residence at a place known as Ganga Sagar, where the river Ganges meets the sea. That place is called Ganga Sagar Tirtha, and even today, people gather there to offer respects to Kapila Dev, the original author of the Sankhya system of philosophy. Unfortunately, the Sankhya system has been misinterpreted by an impositor who is also named Kapila, but that other system of philosophy does not tally with anything described in the Sankhya of Kapila in Srimad Bhagavatam. So the spot where Lord Kapila is he's still over there. He's still performing austerities over there. So this you probably know, and it appears later on in the Bhagavatam in the 5th canto, and then described more so in the 9th canto. This is also the spot where the 60,000 sons of Sagar were burnt because of their offense to Kapila. They were searching for the Ashwamedha horse, and Indra had very cunningly left it where Lord Kapila's ashram was there. So they became very, very envious towards Lord Kapila, thinking that he had stolen the horses. And because of that offense towards the personality of Godhead, some say that the Lord opened his eyes and burned them. But the Acharyas generally say that it's not the nature of Lord to act in that way. They were actually burned because of their own offense there. And then we know that later on, because of the austerities performed by Bhagirath, a descendant of Sagar, Ganga appeared, and he charted the course of Ganga from Himalaya all the way to the ashram of Lord Kapila. So this is also, people bathe over there to get moksha. Just like the 60,000 sons of Sagar were liberated by the influence of the river Ganga, there is a festival over there held on Makra Sankranti. And people come and, well, they bathe all the time, but this is a special time when apparently the Ganges first appeared. They come and bathe over there. Verse 35. Aste yoga samasthaya sankhya abhisutah trayanam api lokanam upashantaya samahitah. Even now, Kapila Muni is staying there in trance for the deliverance of the conditioned souls in the three worlds. And all the acharyas or great teachers of the systems of Sankhya philosophy are worshipping him. So this is the extent of compassion of Lord Kapila. Etan nigaditam tata yat prastoam tvanagaha kapilassa cha samvado devahutyascha pavanaha. My dear son, since you have inquired from me, I have answered. O sinless one, the description of Kapiladev and his mother and their activities are the purest of all discourses. So Maitreya is concluding his discourse with the Falstuti. He says that since you asked me, I have spoken to you about the pure conversation between Kapila and Devahuti. So last verse. Yaidam manushnati yo vidate Kapila muner matam atma yoga guyam Bhagvati krutadihi suparnaketa upalapte bhagavad padarvindam. The description of the dealings of Kapiladev and his mother is very confidential. And anyone who hears or reads this narration becomes a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is carried by Garud. And he thereafter enters into the abode of the Supreme Lord to engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So this is the Falstuti, the benediction that is given to one who hears the teachings of Kapila Muni, Atma Yoga Guyam. So this is the confidential, Guyam is the confidential teachings regarding Atma, regarding connection with the self and the Lord. So Maitreya, he is emphasizing that the goal of such persons is the same as that achieved by Devahuti, but with one difference. He is saying that just by hearing or explaining, one attains the Lord. So what to speak of the results from actually following the instructions? The word upa indicates that Devahuti attained the position of the Lord's associate, filled with prema for serving his lotus feet. So hearing and reciting this without envy. So we see that he glorifies in the previous verse Vidur as O sinless one. So one who does not have envy, but with a pure heart, he hears this, or he recites this, he gets both things. He gets freedom from material entanglement, and then he attains the destination of the Supreme Lord. And if one follows this, then like Devahuti became a personal associate of the Lord, personally serving him with prema, the devotee will attain that. So earlier on in this very chapter, in verse 10 and 11, Lord Kapila had also given the benediction, same benediction, the Falstuti. Maitreya Muni is repeating this once again. Prabhupada says the narration of Kapila Dev and his mother Devahuti is so perfect and transcendental that even if one only hears or reads the description, he achieves the highest perfectional goal of life. For he engages in the loving service of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what is the loving service? Shravana Kirtan. Prabhupada is mentioning, hearing and speaking. There is no doubt that Devahuti, who had the Supreme Lord as a son and who followed the instructions of Lord Kapila Dev so nicely, attained the highest perfection of human life. Okay, so this is the conclusion of the chapter and the conclusion of the third canto. We can pause here and see if there is any comments or discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. With this, Lord Kapila, he chose Mother Devahuti to instruct. Is there any essence which we have to take? Like, is it anything between the mother and son, which Lord want to emphasize here, or what? Why was this kind of situation taken?
That essence, that specific essence is really not brought forth in the Bhagavatam. That does it speak anything specifically about the relationship between a mother and a son? Because there are other times when the Lord instructs people in different relationships. But as we saw, that particular essence has definitely been captured. It's captured in the in the practices that have become prevalent in that area, where that relationship is given prominence. That's why it is known as Matra Gaya. People come for the mother's Shraddha, and the whole temple of Siddhapur is focused on the relationship of a mother with a son. It appears I don't think that it is material or mental speculation, because that relationship is maybe not glorified in the Bhagavatam, but as I mentioned, there is the Siddhapur Mahatmya that does talk more explicitly about the relationship of Lord Kapila with the mother, and basically then applying it to the general condition there. So I don't believe that it's just mental speculation. People just think it is there, but the Bhagavatam does not comment on that aspect specifically.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, we'll stop here. Vanchakalpatarubhayaschet kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Thy Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.